Now, this is a style of architecture, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of different styles tonight. We have such a tremendous diversity of styles from many different eras all along the river. But this style is known as Spanish Revival style. And we call it that because this building was actually modeled after La Giralda, a cathedral in Sevilla, Spain. That clock tower that you see there is very similar to the one that you can see in Spain. There are 250,000 glazed terracotta tiles of cream and white that draw... Coming up straight ahead, you've got the unmissable Trump International Hotel and Tower. So this is the second tallest tower in Chicago at 1,389 feet. And this is a style called Contextualism. Contextualism Plaza. So that is Contextualism. It is a site-specific design, custom-made for its environment. It's all about blending in with your surroundings, harmonizing with the other buildings in your neighborhood in sly, subtle ways. Now, the penthouse in Trump Tower actually just recently went back on the market for $30 million. So, if you're in the market for a little starter home in Chicago, think about Trump Tower as an option, and I'll be mentioning these amazing real estate opportunities. But next up on your right is one of the most photographed buildings in Chicago, the iconic Corn-cob Tower. So way back in the 1960s, nobody was really living in downtown Chicago. In fact, no one was living in city centers across the U.S. People were living more in outskirts, in suburbs. And there's this guy, Bertrand Goldberg, who wanted to change that. He wanted to bring people to live in downtown Chicago. Favorite buildings on the entire river. It's that tall glass building with the lit up white granite called 77 West Wacker. Now, if you look up at the top of 77 West Wacker, you'll notice a Greco-Roman style temple. So this is a style of architecture called Neoclassical. You take this classical design, like the Parthenon in this case, and you update it using modern materials like glass and steel. And I just think that that's probably my favorite building to be lit up at night. I love each building gets lit up in its own specific, unique way. But this whole area of the city over to your left, this whole neighborhood of the city over to your left, is known as the Loop. The Loop. Why do we call it the Loop? Well, we have a public transportation system here known as the L, which stands for Elevated Train, the MART. So this is a style of architecture called Art Deco. Art Deco. Excuse me. And this has all the classic features of Art Deco. Dark inset windows, streamlined vertical lines like racing stripes that draw your eye, up, that polished Indiana limestone color, simple repeated geometric shapes at the tops and at the bottoms, and these telescoping towers. So this was a style for the roaring 20s, ornate, elegant, ostentatious. If each generation takes its values and expresses them in 3 dimensions, then the Merchandise Mart and Art Deco were expressing the luxury and the optimism that was characteristic of the roaring skyscraper. Let's start on the left with the Nuveen building, 333 Wacker. So the Nuveen building is another example of contextualism, because you'll notice that this curve of the building is mimicking the curve in the river. And that blue glass matches the blue of the sky, while the turquoise matches the green of the river. So that is contextualism as well. You're trying to blend in with the natural context, fit in with the natural features of the area, in this case, the river. Now, straight ahead, I want to talk about that beautiful glass building with that Y-shaped base. Almost looks like a giant pencil stuck right into the ground. That is 150 North Riverside, 150 North Riverside from 2017. Very new building. Now, that Y-shaped cantilever design of its base is for two reasons. Number one, so that the building's caissons, those are the foundations of the building, that they don't interfere with the Metro and Amtrak train lines that go directly underneath the building, which are different from the trains that you're currently seeing. But number two, the city has an ordinance for a 30-foot setback for a river walk for all the buildings by the river. This is super important to us here in Chicago, that we keep our waterways, our river and our lake, open, free, and clear for pedestrian access, for everyone to be able to enjoy them. So that's why it's got the Y-shaped base. Now, what do you do? Well, here's what they did at this building. They used a technology called inertial slosh dampers. I'll say that again. Inertial slosh dampers. It basically works like water in a bucket. When this building sways in one direction, 160,000 gallons of water in 12 tanks at the top of the building sloshes in the opposite direction to correct for the sway. It's basically like this giant water shock absorber. The inertia creates a balancing liquid force that's able to dampen the oscillation and bring the building back to rest more quickly, reducing sway and reducing that 30-foot setback for a river walk requirement. And they did so in a pretty amazing way. They used these giant tripod legs to literally vault the building in midair. Those are huge steel I-beams that are taking on tons and tons of weight to suspend this building by its third floor. Just an amazing feat of modern engineering. Rohe, Mies van der Rohe. Super influential architect who made his career right here in Chicago, and he famously said that less is more. Less is more. So I think that there's an elegant simplicity. They are stark, dark, cheap, and easy to make. These buildings, they are more functionally beautiful instead of being all that aesthetically beautiful, right? But, I mean, why build like that? How did we go from the flashy style of Art Deco in the 20s and 30s to just building simple squares on squares? Well, you have to understand that this was the post-World War II generation. This was the post-Great Depression, and you'll start noticing them everywhere. But jumping ahead to the groovy 1970s with the International Style of Gateway Center 3 on your right. So in the 70s, as you can tell, we are still building boxes, right? But now they can have a little more style in the form of precast, precast concrete or stone cladding. And the buildings can even be, gasp, white. How exciting, a whole new color. Let's go to the 1980s, shall we, with Gateway Center 4, that curvy glass building there. So in the 80s, architects are tired of boxes. They're tired of all this square thinking. They think modernism, meh, boring. They want something bolder, something fresher, something with some style again. Thus, contextualism is born. You'll notice that the curve in the building is once again mimicking the upcoming curve in the river. And that greenish color of the glass is matching the color of the river in this particular spot. So again, contextualism, all about blending in with your surroundings, but also all about that you might recognize if you are a Batman fan, because this is where Heath Ledger's Joker robbed a Gotham City bank in the 2008 film, The Dark Knight. If you remember the movie, The Joker, he drove this school bus full of cash straight out of this building and shot in Chicago. We have a very growing and evolving film and TV industry here. However, this used to be the old main post office. That's right. This was once an enormous post office, the largest post office in the world at one point. Now you might be asking yourselves, why do we need such a big post office? Well, way before Amazon, way before the internet, Chicago was actually the mail order catalog capital of the world. We had the likes of Sears department store here, among others, and we actually needed such a big post office to...
We've reached the one, the only, the tallest building in Chicago, the Sears or Willis Tower.
So, back in 1974, Sears department store builds the tallest building in the world at the time. We're right here in the Windy City, so you're going to deal again with building sway. Once again, very festive. Reed Murdoch Center. The Reed Murdoch, home to Encyclopedia Britannica, among others, is the closest thing we have in the river to a style called Prairie Style. So Prairie Style was popularized by Frank Lloyd Wright and is meant to mimic the horizon-hugging plains and prairies of the Midwest. So the hints at Prairie Style that you see in this building are these long, flat, horizontal lines, the super wide windows, the organic, earthy red color of the building, and the images of wheat that are on Modernism, but on steroids, because it's nothing but this jacked up, exposed exoskeleton of a building. That was the style for the late 1960s, and you'll see it a lot in institutional buildings from that era, places like banks, courthouses, public university campuses. You can also see a lot of that in Washington, D.C., in the governmental buildings there, like the IRS building, for example.